Huh, that's not right. You can't multiply hope by mistakes and call it profit. Let's see if anyone notices the janitor's math this time. She was just the night cleaner, invisible, unheard. But one mark of her pen would change the company's future forever. Late at night, when most of the city slept, the tall glass building of Royce Dynamics still glowed against the skyline. The company had once been powerful, known for innovation and success. But now the lights that burned after midnight didn't belong to dreamers. They belonged to desperate people trying to keep the company from collapsing. Among those lights moved one woman no one paid much attention to. Her name was Ava Johnson, the night cleaner. Every evening she arrived quietly with her gray uniform, her cleaning cart rattling softly as she pushed it down the long marble hallways. Her face was calm, her eyes thoughtful. She worked silently, polishing tables, dusting windows, and sweeping away the mess the executives left behind. No one really talked to her. Sometimes the younger interns nodded when they passed her, but most of the executives acted like she wasn't even there. They would walk right past her, discussing millions of dollars in big projects, never realizing that the cleaner they ignored had once been a teacher of mathematics. Ava had lost that job years ago after budget cuts closed her school. Since then, she'd taken whatever work she could find. Cafeterias, offices, anywhere that would pay enough to keep the lights on in her small apartment. But she never stopped learning. Numbers were still her world. She carried a small notebook in her cart where she solved problems just to keep her mind sharp. One night, as she emptied trash bins in the main conference room, she noticed something on the large whiteboard. It was covered in equations, charts, and figures. Across the board were arrows, numbers, and symbols about sales projections and production costs. But even from a distance, she saw something was off. She tilted her head, reading carefully. One of the main formulas on the board, the one about cost efficiency, had a wrong symbol. Instead of a minus, someone had used a plus. It completely changed the result, making the numbers look stronger than they really were. If that formula guided the company's decisions, it could be disastrous. She hesitated. It wasn't her place to correct it. She was just the cleaner. But she couldn't help herself. She picked up a dry erase marker that someone had left on the table and in small, neat handwriting wrote under the equation, "Check this line again. Sign error, effects total." Then she erased the fingerprints from the glass table, turned off the light, and left quietly. The next morning, the executives came in for their early meeting. Among them was Mr. Daniel Royce, the CEO. He was tall, serious, and always looked like he was thinking 10 steps ahead of everyone else. When he entered the room, he frowned at the writing on the board. "Who wrote this?" he asked, pointing to the note. The analysts looked at each other and shrugged. "We left the equations last night, sir," one said. "Maybe one of the finance team made the note." Royce rubbed his chin. Check it anyway." They recalculated the formula and their jaws dropped. The anonymous note was right. The equation had been off by millions. If they'd gone ahead with the current plan, the company would have lost more money than it could recover. Royce stood silent, staring at the small handwriting that had saved them from disaster. He didn't recognize it, but for the first time in weeks, he felt a spark of hope. That night, Ava returned as usual. She had no idea her note had caused a stir. She worked quietly, cleaning floors and wiping down glass doors. In the conference room, she noticed the whiteboard had been erased again. But there were new equations written, even more complex this time. She smiled slightly. Whoever was working on them didn't fix the core problem. She paused again, thinking, then wrote a tiny message in the corner. "You're calculating growth based on false yield. Try using actual return instead of projected." Then she went back to mopping. The next morning, there was another shock in the office. The same mysterious handwriting had corrected yet another mistake. Royce bucked in as the analysts argued over who the math ghost was. "This person," he said, tapping the board, "knows what they're doing." He ordered the team to recheck every major equation used in their current reports. By the afternoon, they realized that multiple mistakes had been hiding in their numbers, mistakes that had been making the company look more profitable than it really was. Correcting them meant facing the truth. They were much closer to bankruptcy than anyone had dared admit. But it also meant they had a chance to fix it, if they acted fast. That evening, Royce stayed late. He was sitting in the dark conference room, staring at the empty whiteboard. When the door opened softly, he turned. Ava froze a second, caught off guard. "Oh, I'm sorry, sir. Didn't mean to disturb you. I'll come back later." He looked at her for a moment, his eyes narrowing slightly. "You work nights, right?" "Yes, sir. Just cleaning." He nodded slowly. "Do you ever write on this board?" "Me?" She blinked, unsure if she'd get in trouble. I just noticed a few things. I'm sorry if I wasn't supposed to touch it." Royce leaned forward. "You corrected an equation that 3 departments missed. You may have saved this company from disaster. Don't apologize." Ava shifted uncomfortably. "It was nothing, sir. Just numbers." "Numbers," he said quietly, "are everything here." He stood and looked at her directly. "Tell me, Miss Johnson, where did you learn this?" "I used to teach math," she said softly. "High school level, before the cuts." He nodded slowly, understanding. For a moment, there was silence between them, filled only by the faint hum of the building's air vents. Royce gestured toward the table. "Sit," he said gently. She hesitated, then did. They spent the next hour talking about the formulas, projections, and financial models. At first, she spoke shyly, but when she began explaining the logic behind certain ratios, her eyes lit up. Numbers were her language, and she spoke it fluently. Royce listened, astonished. He had hired consultants who couldn't explain things as clearly as this woman who cleaned his floors. When she left that night, he thanked her. The next day, he called a private meeting with his top advisors. "We're bringing someone in to review the numbers. Quietly. She's not on the payroll yet, but treat her with respect." That night, when Ava arrived for her shift, she found a note on her cart. "Please meet me in the boardroom at 9 p.m. D. Royce." Her hands trembled slightly. When she entered the room, the whiteboard was filled again, this time with new strategies. Royce smiled at her. He said, "I want you to look at these. Tell me if they make sense." Over the next week, Ava spent her nights not just cleaning, but analyzing. She found errors others had missed, suggested alternatives, and even created new models that simplified their projections. Royce watched, fascinated. Word began to spread quietly among a few trusted staff members. The janitor knew more than the analysts, but Royce warned them to keep it secret for now. He wanted to see how far she could go without interference. One evening, Ava hesitated by the door. "Sir," she said softly, "why are you trusting me with all this?" He smiled. "Because you see what others don't." Meanwhile, the company's situation grew tense. Investors were losing confidence. The board demanded answers. But with Ava's help, Royce began restructuring departments, cutting unnecessary spending, and redirecting resources based on her corrected equations. Slowly, the numbers started to turn around. Weeks passed. Then came the day of the board meeting that would decide the company's future. Everyone gathered in the glass conference room. Executives in suits, analysts with laptops, tension in the air. Royce stood at the head of the table. He started the presentation, showing the previous projections, then the new ones. The difference was stunning. The company wasn't failing. It had been miscalculating all along. Their real potential was stronger than anyone believed. When he finished, one of the board members frowned. "Impressive," he said,
But who exactly found these errors? Your finance team? Royce looked around the room and then smiled. Our night cleaner, he said calmly. Laughter rippled across the table. You're joking, one executive said. I'm not, Royce replied. Her name is Ava Johnson. She's the reason we're still standing. The room went silent. Later that evening, when Ava came in, she found a small group waiting for her. Royce stepped forward holding an envelope. Ava, I have something for you. She looked confused. Sir? He handed her the envelope. Inside was a letter and a new ID card. Starting tomorrow, you're not cleaning floors anymore. You're joining our strategy department. Her eyes filled with tears. Sir, I don't... You've earned it, he said gently. You didn't just clean this place. You cleaned up our future. From that day forward, Ava worked alongside the executives she once passed silently in the halls. She brought ideas that changed the company's direction entirely. Under her influence, they developed new systems based on efficiency and logic instead of pride and guesswork. Within a year, Royce Dynamics went from near bankruptcy to record profit. News outlets called it the miracle turnaround. Few people knew that miracle began with a night janitor and a marker. Sometimes late at night, Ava would still stay behind after everyone left. She'd walk the same quiet halls, remembering how it all started. She never lost her humility. When new janitors were hired, she greeted them by name and treated them with the respect she once wished for. One night, Royce found her again in the conference room, staring at the same whiteboard. Still working late? He asked with a smile. She turned to him. Old habits, I guess. He nodded. We all owe you, Ava. You reminded us that genius doesn't always wear a suit. She smiled softly. And that every job matters, sir, even cleaning floors. Royce looked out the window at the city lights. You know, I used to think success came from being the smartest in the room. Now I know it comes from listening to the quietest voice. Ava looked at the whiteboard, now filled with clean, accurate numbers. Sometimes, she said gently, the truth hides in the small things people overlook. He nodded, understanding. As the lights dimmed and the city outside glowed, the cleaner, who once worked unseen, stood at the center of the company she helped save. Her story spread quietly through the building, a story of intelligence, humility, and courage. And every new employee who walked past her office saw a small framed quote on her desk. Genius hides in unexpected places. No one ever forgot it again.